Hey there, and welcome to a new deep dive. We've got a fascinating stack of material in front of us today, pulling key insights straight from Paul Bambrick Santoyo's compelling book, Driven by Data.
That's right. And this isn't just a quick skim. We're going to really unpack the core ideas presented here about a specific practical framework.
A framework for how schools can use student performance data to, well, improve teaching and student learning dramatically.
Exactly. It's a deep dive into a system that argues effective teaching is, fundamentally linked to understanding what students actually learned.
Not just what the teacher covered.
Right. It challenges some traditional practices in education and offers concrete alternatives.
Think of this as your shortcut to understanding a comprehensive system designed to make sure teaching actually leads to measurable learning.
Yeah, our mission here is to pull out the most important nuggets, the surprising facts, the practical steps, the aha moments.
Yeah, so you can get a solid grasp on this approach quickly but thoroughly, whether you're in education or maybe just curious about what makes effective schools tick.
And the source lays out this comprehensive system, arguing, like I said, that you have to know what students learned, not just what was taught.
It definitely challenges some traditional practices and offers these concrete, evidence-based alternatives.
Yeah.
Really building a culture focused relentlessly on student mastery.
It does. The introduction sets a powerful stage. It talks about working with all students on their weaknesses.
And this idea of being a forth teller, I like that.
Yeah, not just predicting where students are going, but actively showing them the path, right? Towards college, life success, through academic proficiency.
And actively helping them create that future. It makes a strong, almost humble case for social justice.
Suggesting that truly closing the achievement gap comes down to ensuring academic rigor and mastery for every single student.
It really boils down to that, doesn't it?
And the source presents a practical framework for getting there. 4 interconnected pillars, starting with assessment.
Then moving through analysis, action, and culture.
Exactly. And it tackles common obstacles head-on, highlighting the absolutely critical role of targeted professional development.
So if you're curious about how schools can shift from focusing on teaching to focusing with, like, laser precision on what students are actually learning,
And how to build an entire system around that goal.
you've definitely come to the right place. Let's truly unpack this.
Okay. So the core philosophy the source highlights, it's built on this constant, relentless focus on one single question. Are our students learning?
It sounds simple, doesn't it? But the source really makes the case that making this question the ultimate measure changes, well, everything.
It really does. It's fascinating because it immediately shifts the focus. This isn't primarily about, evaluating teachers based on observations or checklists.
Right.
It's about a clear-eyed, fact-based focus on student outcomes. The argument is, when schools make student learning the ultimate test, teaching has to improve.
Teaching and learning have to walk hand in hand, constantly informing each other.
They do. They're not separate things.
And the source distills this whole approach into 4 fundamental principles, almost like the foundation and pillars of the entire system. What are those again?
That's the framework. It's presented as the way to focus on the core drivers that matter. These 4 are what you need to get right.
Okay.
First, assessment. You need rigorous interim assessments that provide frequent, meaningful data. This defines the goal.
Rigorous is key there.
Absolutely. Second, analysis. You have to meticulously examine the results to identify the root causes of strengths and, crucially, shortcomings. This finds the strategy.
Got it.
Third, action. Based on that analysis, you must teach effectively what students need, changing practice based on evidence, putting the strategy into practice.
Okay, makes sense. And the fourth?
Fourth, culture. You need to create a school environment where this whole data-driven approach can not only survive, but actually thrive, building the right conditions.
Assessment, analysis, action, culture. Okay, so the source immediately follows that up by diving into what it calls 8 mistakes that matter.
Yes, these are presented as common pitfalls, things schools really need to guard against, almost like a checklist of warnings.
Why are these mistakes so crucial to understand right up front?
Well, this raises an important question. The source argues these aren't just minor errors. They're fundamental flaws that seriously undermine, maybe even cripple a school's ability to use data effectively.
Okay, so let's look at them. Identifying these could be a critical first step for any school listening.
Definitely. First, inferior interim assessment. The source calls having rigorous interim assessment the absolute lifeblood of data-driven instruction.
The lifeblood, wow.
Yeah. The point is, without thoughtful, carefully crafted tests aligned to the end goals, state tests, college readiness, and that often includes, say, open-ended responses to gauge deeper thinking, well, effective analysis is just impossible.
So if the test bar is too low,
It can't measure what matters. The source emphasizes investing time and resources in creating or acquiring excellent interim assessments, matched to or even exceeding state test rigor. You might even need to beef up commercial tests.
so bad assessment, bad data, weak foundation. Makes perfect sense. What's mistake number 2?
Secretive interim assessment. This flows right from the first point. If the assessment defines the standard, then teachers must know what that standard is before they teach.
Can't hit a target you can't see.
Exactly. Transparency is key. The assessment expectations need to be public, understood by everyone.
Okay, that reinforces the assessment as the starting point, the blueprint. What about how often you test?
That's mistake number 3, infrequent assessment. Interim tests need to be, well, interim, periodic. The source suggests ideally every 6 to 8 weeks.
Why that often?
If you test less often, you just don't have enough data points to track progress effectively. You miss chances to spot problems in time to fix them. You need those regular feedback loops.
Gotcha. And the fourth mistake is about matching the test to the teaching.
Yes, the curriculum assessment disconnect. The source is really clear. The curriculum scope and sequence what you teach and when must precisely match the standards on the assessment.
So if you test something not taught yet, or taught differently,
The data is worthless for improving instruction. The assessment has to be a valid measure of the curriculum's effectiveness in terms of student learning.
okay, good, transparent, frequent, aligned assessments. What about getting the results back quickly?
Mistake number 5, delayed results. This is presented as truly critical. The source puts it bluntly. Even the most perfect assessment is zero benefit if results aren't graded, analyzed, and returned quickly.
Zero benefit. That's strong.
It is. Every day of delay means teachers are teaching new stuff without correcting old errors. The insights have a very short shelf life for immediate impact. Analysis has to be fast.
And who does the analysis seems to matter just as much?
Absolutely. Mistake 6, the separation of teaching and analysis. Data-driven instruction, according to this source, only succeeds when analysis is teacher-owned,
Teacher-owned, meaning
meaning teachers must analyze their own classroom data. Lasting improvements come when teachers take personal ownership, understand firsthand what their students are learning based on their data.
so having someone else analyze it and hand them a report, that's not enough.
Not according to this source. The teacher needs to do the intellectual work themselves to really internalize what needs to change.
Okay, which leads to mistake 7.
Ineffective follow-up. Analysis is wasted if it doesn't lead to concrete changes. You can analyze forever, but without a clear, simple system for implementing specific plans at specific times, it won't impact students. You need disciplined action planning.
And finally, the 8th mistake. I bet it's about time.
You got it. Not making time for data. The whole process, testing, scoring, analyzing, planning action, must be explicitly scheduled, built into the calendar.
If it's not scheduled, it won't happen.
Exactly. It gets pushed aside. And leaders have to model this, prioritize it in their own schedules too. Practice what we preach, as the source says.
That's a really powerful list of pitfalls. It sounds like ignoring any one of these basically guarantees failure. The source also warns against false drivers. What are those about?
This is where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit provocative. False drivers are initiatives that look important, consume time and resources, but don't actually lead directly to student academic excellence.
Things schools spend energy on, thinking they're improving, but they're actually missing the mark.
Exactly. Chasing something that won't yield results. The source highlights 3 common false paths.
Okay, what's the first one?
The pursuit of total buy-in, spending endless hours trying to convince everyone to love an idea before you try it. The source says that's mostly wasted effort.
But so don't wait for everyone to agree.
No. Create buy-in by focusing on fundamentals, getting results, and letting belief follow the evidence. Get people willing to try it, let the results speak.
Interesting. Okay, number 2.
Reliance on poorly implemented professional learning communities, PLCs.
Yeah.
Teacher collaboration is valuable, yes, but collaboration just for its own sake, or without a clear, results-oriented focus, that's a false driver.
So PLCs need a specific purpose.
They must be explicitly focused on rigorously analyzing student learning data and identifying actionable steps. Collaboration without that disciplined focus isn't effective.
Got it. And the third, false driver.
Year-end assessment analysis. The source uses a really stark analogy here, analyzing data after the year is over, after the child is gone.
It's like performing an autopsy instead of a physical exam.
Exactly. You might learn something for the future, but it's too late to help that student. It's tragic.
That autopsy analogy is powerful. It underlines the urgency of using data during the year, diagnosing the sickness while you can still provide the medicine.
Precisely. Waiting until the end when some students have died, academically failed to learn, is preventable.
So the real drivers are those core principles:
Mhm.
assessment, analysis, action, culture, done right.
Yes. And the source even gives reflection questions for you, the listener, right at the start, like, what are the common mistakes in your context? What first steps could you take? Who needs to be involved? How do you get them on board with that involvement now, buy-in later idea? It really grounds it.
Okay, let's dive deep into that first pillar, assessment. The source calls this the absolute starting point. It sounds like it's not just about having tests.
No, it's about using the test itself to fundamentally define and drive the whole instructional process.
How so?
What's truly fascinating here is the idea that the assessment itself defines the standard. Written standards are, well, kind of meaningless until you define how they'll be assessed. That determines the level of rigor you're really expecting.
So you create a rigorous test first.
Yes, and then you teach to meet the standards set by that assessment.
Okay, hold on. That feels like a big shift. You don't teach, then test what you taught. The test comes first.
The source strongly argues yes. The rigor of the actual assessment items drives the rigor of what's taught in class. The assessment isn't just measuring, it's the blueprint for what needs teaching and to what level.
And the key tool for this are the interim assessments.
Exactly. Formal exams, ideally every 6 to 8 weeks. When done right, they give those written standards a clear, concrete definition of the rigor needed for success.
Why are these interim assessments so advantageous compared to, say, just using textbook chapter tests? What specific benefits does the source list?
Several key ones. They define standards, provide that roadmap for rigorous teaching. They improve teaching by identifying weaknesses during the year, allowing teachers to change strategies before it's too late. They provide targeted focus, identifying specific strength weaknesses and providing a baseline. They provide accountability while there's still time to fix failed strategies. They offer visibility, you can chart progress graphically. Crucially, they check understanding without scaffolding. They show true independent mastery, and they prepare students for high-stakes tests.
So how do these formal periodic interim assessments connect with the informal daily checks for understanding, questioning, exit tickets?
The source acknowledges those daily checks are incredibly powerful, maybe even more powerful for immediate feedback on who isn't learning right now. But they lack that sense of the larger cumulative year-end goal that interim assessments provide by revisiting material. Daily checks tell you about today. Interims track long-term mastery and retention.
So you need both.
Absolutely. Frequent daily checks and periodic formal interims mapping to long-term goals.
What are the absolute must-haves for effective assessment design, whether you buy tests or make them?
The source gives 4 non-negotiables. Assessment is the starting point, created before teaching begins. It dictates rigor. Assessment is transparent. Expectations are public so everyone knows the goal. Assessment is common. Same exams across classes grades for comparison, tracking, collaboration. Assessment is interim. Frequent enough, ideally 68 weeks, to allow for timely intervention.
The source also gives really specific guidelines for writing or selecting these assessments. It's clearly not just about having any test.
No, definitely not. Whether creating or buying, you need meticulous attention to detail. Guidelines include: start from the end goal exam. Design with state tests, SATAC, college demands in mind. Not just vague standards, the actual test. Align rigorously to that end goal test. Content, format, length, question types. You might need to modify acquired tests. See the actual test if acquiring. Leaders must inspect physical copies, maybe take it themselves. Don't trust marketing alone. Assess to college-ready standards. Even in elementary middle school, push rigor. Maybe assess some next grade standards early. Embed algebra. Push complex text analysis. Design to reassess earlier material. Tests must be cumulative to check retention and see if reteaching worked. Give teachers a stake. Meaningful teacher input and creation selection builds investment.
It's interesting how the source tackles assessment myths, too, like whether multiple choice can be rigorous.
Yes. It argues the options define rigor. If choices are tricky, require deep understanding to eliminate distractors, it is rigorous. Same for open-ended. The rubric defines rigor. Both types are needed.
And what about tests like the SAT, just test-taking skills?
The source argues no. They require deeper conceptual understanding, analytical reasoning. The focus shouldn't be question type, but the cognitive rigor required. Even early reading tests should push critical comprehension, inference.
So it all boils down to ensuring the assessment is a powerful, precise tool measuring deep understanding against high expectations used to drive instruction.
Precisely. The source lists 5 core drivers summarizing this: transparent starting point, common and interim, aligned to state college readiness, aligned to instructional sequence, and reassess material included.
Okay, moving on to Pillar 2, analysis. Deep diving what happened and why. If assessment sets the goal, analysis figures out the strategy.
That's right. Rigorous analysis of those interim results is like having that view from the pool, analyzing learning as it happens, while you can still act, not the autopsy later.
Data reports are part of this. Do we need fancy, complicated reports?
The source explicitly warns against over-reporting as another false driver. Quality trumps volume. A simple, user-friendly 1-2-page report is plenty.
Should be on it.
This relevant info, question level, standard level, individual student level, whole class grade level data. But the real driver isn't the report itself.
What is it, then?
It's the structured test-in-hand analysis conversation between teachers and leaders.
Test-in-hand analysis. Okay, tell me more. How's that done effectively?
It's about sitting down together with the actual assessment questions right there and digging deep, constantly comparing the summary data to the actual question. You do question level and standard level analysis side by side, always asking why students struggle. If 30% got Q5 wrong, look at Q5. Did many pick the same wrong answer? Why? What misunderstanding does that reveal? You search for separators questions where stronger students significantly outperform weaker ones. These pinpoint skills for targeted reteaching or small groups. You scan by individual student to spot anomalies or tailor approaches.
So it's not just what they got wrong, but diving deep into the why, using the actual question, common errors.
Exactly. That's the deep analysis. The source gives helpful questions, global questions, overall results, strength, weaknesses, and dig-in questions. Why that wrong answer? Why was Q2 harder than Q1 on the same standard? Where are the separators? Moving beyond stats to understand the learning gaps.
And analysis needs that fast turnaround.
Absolutely crucial. Analysis is only useful if action follows quickly. Systems need to get results analyzed and insights used within days, ideally 48 hours, definitely within a week while it's fresh.
How do you make that happen?
The source strongly suggests dedicated half-days or specific blocks right after assessments for analysis time. Build it in.
The analysis meeting between teacher and leader is presented as the real driver here. Why are these meetings so critical?
It's a core practice. It's where that test-in-hand deep analysis happens collaboratively. They offer specific advice grounded in data, track achievement over time, and shift the focus from was it taught to was it learned.
Should these be one-on-one meetings or team meetings?
The source says both have value. One-on-one focuses intensely on one teacher's data and student needs. Group meetings allow sharing best practices among teachers with similar students or subjects, and collaborative planning for action based on common needs.
So maybe one-on-one for deep analysis, group for planning action.
That's a good way to think about it. And preparation is key. Setting expectations, teachers reviewing the assessment beforehand, maybe predicting performance. Teachers need training on how to analyze and plan.
What happens right after the test?
Teachers do their own initial analysis and draft an action plan. Leaders analyze independently too. Then leader reviews the teacher's plan before the meeting.
Okay, during the meeting itself, how does the conversation flow effectively, avoiding defensiveness?
Key principles guide it. Let the data do the talking. Point to the report, the questions. Ask the teacher what they see. Makes it objective, less personal. Let the teacher do the talking. Teachers must own the process, reach their own conclusions. The leader guides with questions. We learn best finding answers ourselves. Always go back to the test answers. The actual questions provide the detail for concrete recommendations. It's non-negotiable. Know the data yourself as the leader. You can't guide deep analysis if you haven't done your homework. Don't fight ideological battles. Keep it practical, focused on this data, these students, pragmatic improvements.
The source even gives example starters, like looking at question 7. What's the data telling you? Or why do you think students picked a C so often here? Or what's interesting is they did well on Q1, but struggled on Q2 on the same standard. Why?
Exactly. The leader is a skilled facilitator, guiding the teacher through their own data, prompting reflection, not just telling what to do. The goal is genuine teacher-owned analysis.
Teachers taking full ownership for results and figuring out what they can do differently.
Yes. And the 5 core drivers of analysis summarize this: user-friendly reports, immediate turnaround, teacher-owned analysis, test-in-hand analysis, and deep analysis, getting to the why.
And again, application steps for teachers, school leaders, district leaders, focusing on analysis skills, templates, and system setup, plus those reflection questions pushing you to apply it.
Right. Always connecting back.
Okay, Pillar 3, action. Changing teaching to enhance learning. After assessment and analysis, this is called the most daunting task, translating insights into classroom practice, where the rubber meets the road.
Indeed. This is where insights become real change impacting students. The source says students feel the improvement when action is effective. It's about changing learning at its core.
And the main tool for this is the action plan.
Yes. Right after analysis, a simple, focused, doable action plan is created, tied directly to the analysis conclusions. Key features: correct analysis. Plan is only as good as the thinking behind it. New strategies. Critically important. If the old way didn't work, doing more of it won't help. Needs different, effective strategies. Specific time of implementation. Most important part. Changes, reteaching must be dated and timed in lesson plans calendar. If time isn't set aside, it won't happen. And prioritize can't do everything at once.
How does this look in the classroom? What specific techniques does the source highlight for teachers?
Teachers need courage and support to change practices. The action plan should be right there when writing lesson plans, maybe even a required reflection box. How did I use data action plan here? Faculty meetings can generate shared ideas for rigor and reteaching.
And the source lists specific classroom practices.
A whole menu. Data-driven classroom best practices. Ongoing assessment. Tighten the feedback loop between interims with questioning, do-nows, exit tickets for quick adjustments. Rewrite Tighten objectives. Make them highly specific, targeting needs from analysis. Look at test questions first. Write clear no-do objectives and matching assessment questions first. Do more with do-nows. Use the first 5-10 minutes for focus reteach based on assessment data. Mixed formats, spiral review, track performance, observe students working. Include why-how questions. Revisit yesterday's objective. Maybe weekly error correction. Use differentiated instruction. Based on data, work intensely with small groups while others work independently. Group by specific skill need. Use stations, work contracts, tiered menus. Data drives the small groups. Use exit tickets. Rigorous tickets for immediate daily feedback. Track, grade immediately, follow up fast. Next day's do now lunch bunch. Align to scoop sequence. Build peer-to-peer support. Students can teach each other. Use strong students to help others. Run stations. Train peer tutors how to ask questions, not give answers. Think pair share, peer editing, study groups. Student self-evaluation. Empower students. Weekly skill checks, tracking charts. Go over tests with them discussing why answers are wrong. Self-grading with rubrics. Practice worksheets with answers. Cumulative rubrics. Builds agency. Make homework meaningful. Target assessment areas. Review homework problem areas in class. Have students fix errors. Track by skill. Spiral review. Leveled homework. Align for match regard to assessments. Use for open book quizzes. Encourage completion. Challenge problems for advanced kids.
Wow, that's incredibly comprehensive. And all tied back to the data analysis and action plan. The source calls this ability to adjust quickly the audible.
Yes. And action isn't just in the classroom. Leaders ensure follow-up school-wide, aligned tutoring, share assessment data goals with tutors, make every second count, use breakfast, lunch, hallways for quick reteach review, teach students time value, all hands on deck, train non-traditional staff, secretaries, volunteers, aides, for targeted skill support, linked to data.
The source also details accountability for school leaders in action. How do they ensure plans get implemented?
Leaders monitor and support. They need to observe more smartly, focus observations on reteaching, rigor levels, bring assessment results into classrooms or struggling students getting practice. Does classroom rigor match assessment rigor? Review lesson plans for action plan integration. Maybe mandate that reflection box. Leading analysis meetings is key accountability. Change principal meetings to focus on data. Track observations recommendations.
The results meeting protocol sounds like a key structure for teacher teams to collaborate on action.
It is. Ensures meetings are focused on student learning goals from data, stay on target, use time well. Sample 55-minute agenda. Roles. Deep dive on one standard, what worked so far. Chief challenges, misconceptions. brainstorm solutions, structured round robin, reflect on feasibility, consensus on best actions, put tasks, reteaching dates on calendar, develop concrete lesson elements, do nows, guides, homework.
And strong leadership is key to make this protocol work.
Essential. Leaders model it, run early meetings, provide feedback, keep it specific and focused, facilitate firmly, avoid tangents, split large groups, ensure dates are set, repeat if needed.
It's a systematic way to move from problem analysis to collaborative solution action.
It is, and student engagement is part of action too. When students know the goals, their results, and their action steps, they're more motivated. They become co-participants.
Okay, final pillar, culture. Creating conditions for success. The source says, when done well, data-driven instruction becomes the school fabric, driving achievement. A strong culture is essential.
Right. High-achieving schools have a culture of high expectations for all. Not just a slogan, it's embedded in everything. The process isn't left to chance. It's operationalized through the concrete actions of the other pillars.
How do you build buy-in, especially when the source advises against demanding it up front?
That involvement now, buy-in later idea again. The best initiatives create buy-in as people see results. Identify and cultivate key faculty leaders, those in the expert network, skilled teachers, and trust network, go to people. They become bridges to buy-in.
What about resistors?
Keep them involved, trained, supported. As long as leaders are committed and consistent, improved student results will gradually win most people over.
The calendar is called the largest rock of all. Why so foundational?
Huge. That big rocks analogy put the priorities in first. The calendar is the jar. Schools live and die by their calendars. A conscious calendar prioritizing the big rocks assessment time, analysis time, action planning, reteaching is essential. Key elements. Make time for data. Block out time for administering, scoring, analyzing promptly. Note end goal tests. Plan interim timing working backward from summative tests. Mark PD. Schedule it before assessments, implementation, and after. Content focus based on results, action planning. Leave room for reteaching. Dedicated time, maybe a week. After assessment, signals results matter and guide curriculum.
Building by borrowing comes up again, for culture too.
Yes, vital for building belief. Identify and adapt best practices from successful schools. Visit them, see success firsthand, borrow tools, strategies, calendars. Seeing it work elsewhere creates belief and urgency.
And getting to why, explaining the rationale.
Crucial for trust. Leaders need to explain why this work matters, simply and defensively. Use stories, analogies like physical versus autopsy, connect personally, articulate how it serves the mission and their students.
Okay, so the 5 core drivers of data-driven culture. Summarize this.
Exactly. Highly active leadership, introductory PD, implementation calendar, build by borrowing, and the largest rock of all, effective professional development for leaders and teachers.
That circle back to PD seems huge. The largest rock. Even bigger than the calendar? Why?
It's the engine. Teachers must experience success and get concrete strategies. Well-trained leaders are essential to facilitate analysis, monitor action, navigate resistance. Without strong, trained leaders and teachers, even perfect assessments fail. PD isn't a one-off, it's foundational, ongoing, integrated.
And again, application steps for all levels. Teachers influencing culture, leaders building systems and providing PD, districts impacting assessment and turnaround.
Yes, shared responsibility at every level.
The source also tackles FAQs and obstacles, like assessment, interim versus formative.
Different scope. Interims cover all material to date, cumulatively. Formative in the moment checks cover smaller subsets, often daily learning.
Can you just rely on daily formative checks? Are interims necessary?
Source says yes, interims are essential. They gauge retention over time. Daily checks don't guarantee mastery hasn't faded. Need both.
What about dealing with too much or too little mandated testing?
Source suggests 4 to 6 rigorous interim cycles a year is manageable. Too much. Minimize emphasis on other tests, treat as assignments as possible, lobby for change, too few. Build supplemental interims. District tests, poor quality. Build supplemental ones. De-emphasize district results internally.
No interim assessments at all?
Creating them is huge, but builds buy-in. Better. Build by borrowing from similar successful districts, or critically evaluate commercial products for rigor, alignment, transparency, flexibility.
What if students bomb the first interim on everything? That must be discouraging.
Source addresses this. Reasons. Test too hard, not aligned, students way below grade, inadequate teaching, key. Start at the student's actual level. Use assessments, maybe diagnostics on prior grades, to find where they really are. Then map an accelerated path, increase time resources on gaps, improve teaching based on data, meet them where they are to get them where they need to go faster.
Specific advice for K2 assessments too.
Yes. Include critical reading comprehension, rigorously assess foundational math, assess one-on-one small groups, read math tests to students if needed, supplement curriculum for rigor.
Can you postpone content on an interim if teachers are behind?
Yes, but critical caveat. Postponed, not eliminated. Must appear on a later interim. Analyze results only on what was covered. Maintains accountability.
Analysis questions. So much data. What's the focus?
Keep reports simple. One-page class, single most important driver. Teacher analysis of specific assessment questions, item analysis, then standard level, then overall. Question level is paramount.
Is analyzing last year's data useful?
Source argues strongly against it as a primary driver. That autopsy analogy again. Focus overwhelmingly on current year data, interims, diagnostics to drive change while you can still help those students. Exception. K-5 reading levels, where trajectory matters.
Best way to start data analysis at a new school implementing this.
Quick look at prior year data for trends best practices. But immediate focus. The first interim assessment matching the first 8 to 9 weeks of current year teaching provides immediate actionable info.
District data teams analyzing data, does that count as teacher-owned?
No, source is clear. Teacher-owned means teachers analyzing data for their own students impacting their own practice. Support is fine, but not a replacement for the teacher's own deep dive.
Action questions. Are there effective, non-content specific strategies?
Source points back to that big list. Increasing rigor throughout the lesson. Strategic do-nows, exit tickets, differentiated instruction, a repertoire for all teachers.
Should teachers just have their own style not planned together?
Style is fine, but must be effective based on results. In effective schools, best practices rise based on data, get adopted. Collective planning, results meeting protocol, builds capacity by borrowing effective strategies.
How to guide teachers choosing different strategies with varying results.
Let the results talk. Encourage different approaches initially. Look at successful schools. After each interim, data shows what worked best. Clear best practices emerge over time based on evidence.
Culture questions. Strategies for initial resistance.
High-quality PD. Experience benefits. Create ideal conditions. Time, resources, support. Let results build buy-in naturally. Source also dismisses traditional SMART goals once the interim cycle becomes the built-in driver for improvement.
How to build urgency to move from good to great.
Build by borrowing. Get staff looking outside at higher-achieving schools with similar students. Organize visits. Seeing success elsewhere builds belief and urgency.
This brings us full circle to that final section, leading professional development. The source highlights 5 frequent failures in adult learning that hurt PD.
Yes, crucial traps to avoid. 1. Teaching by talking. Adults retain little from lecture, minimize trainer talk. 2. Treating adults mainly by I do, we do, you do, better than lecture, but doesn't leverage adult need to generate understanding themselves, can imply presenter is sole knowledge source. 3. Not specifically targeting leaders. PD often ignores the concrete skills leaders need to implement the system. Leader training is essential. 4. Struggling to structure large group sharing. Hard to manage time, keep focus, guide to conclusions without just stating them. Easily derailed. 5. Poorly planning transitions time. Unclear instructions, messy transitions waste huge amounts of learning time.
So if those are pitfalls, what's the best kept secret to great PD according to the source? How do you make it stick?
Living the learning. The training experience should mirror the skill. Don't tell about analysis, do analysis. Don't explain assessment principles, have them discover them by analyzing sample tests.
So create a lived experience of the skill.
Exactly. Define the end goal. What should they do? Then design activities allowing them to reach it mostly on their own with expert facilitation.
The source has that great example comparing lecture, guided practice, and living the learning for the assessment chapter.
It's a perfect illustration. Lecture, slides, guided practice model, analyzed together, they try. Living the learning. Immediately give diverse sample questions for one standard. Have pairs analyze. How differ? Which more rigorous? Why? What does this reveal about assessment? Facilitator guides with questions, circulates, prompts. They identify principles, rigor levels, format impact, need for variety, assessment defines standard. Then you frame their conclusions with formal language slides.
So participants do the hard cognitive work discovering principles themselves. More invested, learning sticks better.
Precisely. They generated it, they own it, they believe it. Key strategies. Activity reflection framing applying. Airtight activities. Core of living the learning. High quality, varied activities. Analyze data questions, case studies, videos, role plays. Embedding objectives. Minute by minute precise instructions. require generating something tangible, address tough situations, show starting points, well aligned so they can reach conclusions. Substantive reflection and sharing, process the activity. Independent reflection first, short, timed. Then small group pair sharing, highly effective for engagement, explicit protocol, roles, timed, intentional groups. Finally, large group sharing requires masterful questioning. Pair sharing ensures all participate. Effective questioning techniques, most critical facilitator skill. Start from end goal. What should they say? Word questions precisely to guide. Give questions before activity. Nudge, don't drag. Scaffolded questions. Think volleyball, not ping pong. Multiple participants respond before you jump in. When showing effective practice videos, ask only for strengths initially. Framing. Provide common language concepts only at the end of reflection. Brief bullet points on slides, summarizing their discoveries. Don't frame too early. Apply the learning. Let's apply learning in simulated or real context during after PD. Analyze own data, revise lesson. Essential for cementing learning. Never sacrifice application for covering more material. Ideally, PD springboards to real-life assignment with accountability.
Managing time and inspiring the audience also sound critical.
Yes. Prioritize the core objective when managing time. Know where you'll cut if needed. Hold questions answered later. Park off-topic personal ones. Admit if you don't know. And inspire. Share authentic success stories, schools, faculty, students. Emphasize impact. Connect personally. People believe when they hear repeated stories of success.
Wow, that truly was a deep dive into the Driven by Data framework presented in this source. We've covered assessment, analysis, action, and culture in depth.
Identified mistakes and false drivers. Looked at applications at different levels. Explored specific strategies for action.
And really dug into how effective PD, living the learning, is key to making it all happen.
We've seen how it centers student learning, stresses rigorous interim assessments as the start, demands deep why analysis, requires specific action plans and strategies, needs a supportive culture, and relies on trained leaders and teachers experiencing it themselves.
It's complex, yeah, but feels incredibly practical as laid out here. A real roadmap makes you think about the difference between teaching and ensuring learning.
And makes a compelling case for this approach as a path to social justice, closing gaps through rigorous learning for all, operationalized through these specific steps.
So what does this mean for you listening right now? Maybe you're an educator thinking about your practice, a leader considering changes, or just curious about effective schools.
Yeah.
This dive gives you a detailed model to consider.
Which raises that important reflection question. Given this framework and the idea that knowledge needs to be applied, what's one concrete specific step you could take this week, inspired by this deep dive, to focus more clearly on what students are actually learning in your context?
Something to mull over. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive into Driven by Data. We really hope it's given you truly valuable insights to carry forward.